like that. So, but that's the privilege of having a green screen. Second thing is before you turn away and say it looks like the Kool-Aid man, this is just the torn into gear that we're going to be having on, and that will be available soon. The weather for the day is Friday, high of 75, low of 64. Saturday, high of 82, low of 61. Sunday, high of 84, 61, sunny. Monday, high of 84, low of 63, sunny. Tuesday, more of the same, high of 81, low of 64. I feel that I need to tell you guys a couple things. It's election time. I do not come at this blindly. I've run for office. I've served on commissions. I've done this for years. I take it very seriously, as well as you. Um, you should investigate who you are voting for, instead of voting for what somebody says without you knowing how that person stands. Number two, as I was talking to our guest today, anyone that is running for election, you should see that person more than every 4 years or every 6 years. They should be in your community all the time, and you should expect that to happen. The next thing I want to tell people is there's going to be a new change. What we're going to do is we're going to ask that you not watch the show on my 3 pages. We're going to ask that you watch the show on WVS or M106. Now, if you're listening to the show and would like to watch the show later, you can always watch the show because the show repeats on M106 and 103.7. Or if you right now would like to be or ask our candidates any question, feel free. You can do that on WVS 103.7 The Beat, Facebook, or M106, Instatech. I mean, all the social outlets, you can see them. With that said, my guest today is no stranger to the community. His dad served on the commission and other commissions, countless. I'm going to let him introduce that. But he is no stranger to the show. He's actually one of the guys that watches the show every week. And he was the first guy when we put it out there. And I guess I need to say one other thing. We're going to put it out there. We have sent out emails. We've called people. You know what? If you don't feel that it's not important for you to reach out to the community, we're giving you a free shot to put your agenda out there. I guess, in other words, I'm not going to beg you to come on the show. I would hope that you would. With that said, put your hands together like Fred Hammond would say for John Jack Page. How you doing?
Hey,
sir?
everybody. Hey, Greg, I want to say, too, one thing is that everybody loves the Kool-Aid man. So don't do that, you know.
Kind of looks like it's a lot of red. It's a lot of red. The torn into hats, and the shirts will be coming out.
Yeah, but you know that's a beloved guy. So don't stray from that. I think you're all right.
As you know, the primary election is coming up, and I'm just gonna call you Jack, if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Jack, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family has been in politics for years.
Yeah, I'm 55 years old, married, have 2 kids. Grew up in McLaughlin and Nelson neighborhoods my entire life. I now live in the Bluffton neighborhood down in the west end of town. But I feel that I got a pretty good handle on what goes on in our core neighborhoods and in the downtown area. Mm-hmm. I got introduced into public service and civil service through my family and through guys like you. I watched my stepfather on the city commission. He was vice mayor for a term too. I watched him, and this was before computers. This was before you could have a laptop for your meetings. This was before any of that.
Right.
So he would have rooms full of papers and everything that filled a room of our house that was nothing but city commission business. So it was very interesting to me that to see that structure and see how government works and everything. And I've always been interested in it ever since.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was president of Nelson Neighborhood Association, and she also was the chairman of the Civil Service Board for a long time.
Yeah, I served with her.
Yep. So downtown downtown and the workings of our local government are not a stranger to me.
Mm-hmm. So it's 2021, and John Jack Page is sitting up and saying that I should jump in to the race. Why?
The reason I jumped into the race?
Yeah.
Well, I've ran before. I ran for my ward seat and lost that run to my friend Teresa, who we really had a lot of similar ideas and everything. I remember going to a candidates forum at McGrath Park with her, and somebody asking us the question that, you guys seem to have a lot of the same similar stances and ways and ideas on how things in city government should work. What's the difference between you? And me and Teresa kind of looked at each other and said, well, I'm a man and she's a woman. And outside of that, we really didn't see a whole lot of differences. But I ran then, had a nice, tight, great run. I don't fault Teresa. She ran a great campaign. We both ran a very positive campaign. There was no ripping and tearing into each other. Or anything like that.
Right.
But one of the things I ran on last time was the air of transparency and things in downtown, and I'm just not sure that we're there yet.
Mm-hmm.
We still, we've had issues with spending problems, and we've had issues with when you have, let's not say it's illegal spending. Let's just say it's a spending irregularity. We didn't know, we didn't do it right or whatever. Well, if you have one, that's fine. You have two, we're starting to get interesting. But when you have those two and then you vote not to hold a full audit to see if there's anything else out there, that says to me that, we're still not transparent as we need to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the points I ran on. My three main points that I'm running on, though, are it's protect our parks, protect our money, which some of that transparency issue we just talked about, and protect our housing. I'll talk a little bit about all three if you want me to. So,
well, let's dig right into them.
All right, Greg. Well, protect our parks. I'm that one I'm really, really passionate about because my stepfather helped craft and write the Charter Parks Ordinance for the city of Muskegon. And what that ordinance says is any long-term conveyance of public park land to a private entity should go to a vote of the people. It should not be decided by any commissioner or any, at that level. That those are too big of decisions, and I think they need to be vetted before a vote of the people. Well, lately, we've had a jet ski chalet come into Pierre Marquette. We've had expansions on a restaurant come into Pierre Marquette. And none of these things were done with a vote of the people. Right. And I'm not anti-development. I like a lot of what I see in those areas. I just want them to follow their own ordinance and put it before a vote of the people, like our own ordinance says.
Exactly. Follow the charter.
Right.
And follow the commission should be more involved in that transparency. Well, if you look at the spending issues that we had, those business spending issues never should have happened, or if they happened, they should have came through the commission. And as you say, transparency, it's a mess. I see it as a mess.
There's too much asking forgiveness and not permission. I feel there's a lot of that going on.
And to go with that, late budgets handed in.
Correct. Correct.
So
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah, and another one of my points that I was on is like I said, it's protect your money, and we have a huge opportunity with federal dollars being brought into the city coffer from COVID funding. This is a once in a generation opportunity we're going to get. And we've seen spending irregularities in the last 4 years that to me don't exude confidence. They don't say that, you know, we can trust you to spend this extra 22 million some odd dollars that are going to come into our coffers fair and equitably across the city. I think that, you know, that's another reason I jumped into the race, is I want to make sure that those federal dollars go as fair and equitable to serve as many citizens in the city of Muskegon as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. And your third issue?
It's protect our housing. And the city has been moving forward with building a lot of housing in filling areas, and I believe that's great. Empty lots are really not a good boon for any parts of any neighborhood. Doesn't matter if it's the West End or Marsh or Angel or any of the particular neighborhoods. When you have big holes from missing housing and everything, that doesn't say this is a neighborhood. That says this is kind of piecemealed and broken up. So the city's infilling that.
Mm-hmm.
The issue I have with it is twofold. One, we base a lot of these things on affordable housing, and the definition of affordable housing for the city is it's based on the as everybody, I hope everybody understands this, is adjusted gross income. So whatever your AGI is, that's what they base the income on. But they're basing these projects on the AGI of the entire county, not the residents of the city of Muskegon.
Right.
And the entire county has a much larger AGI than residents in the city of Muskegon. So when we're saying that, well, people will qualify, this will be 80% of AGI for the county. Well, that's fine, but you're already putting our citizens at a disadvantage by not comparing apples to apples. You're saying that, okay, the AGI for the county is X number of dollars, but it's only a half of that for the city of Muskegon residents.
Exactly. And the thing is that they're building these homes and getting rid of the blight, which is a great thing, but a lot of people are not going to be able to afford the homes that they're building.
That's why I said, who are they building these houses for? Is it influx of new residents? Is it promotion in neighborhoods? And the other second part of the housing thing is that we have a first-time housing buyer program already on the books in the city of Muskegon. It's already there, but it's capped at a $5,000 cap. Well, in today's real estate market, $5,000 cap barely pays your closing costs.
Right.
It's really not helping you move into, and I know a lot of people in the city. I know a ton of people in the city of Muskegon that can afford rent. They do it every month, clicking off like this, but they can't afford to get that down payment and jump through the first time buyer programs and get their credit scores ready to qualify for those homes. And I'd like to see that first time buyer program expanded. And I'd like to see it go from the 5,000 to potentially 20,000.
Right.
And I also added on a caveat to that was, if you're a social equity candidate for a past marijuana conviction or some of those lines, let's add an extra 5,000 onto that and pay for that out of the revenue that we're getting for recreational marijuana taxes.
Okay. Let's talk about the marijuana taxes and how many marijuana places have moved in. Do you think they were saturated, oversaturated, or we can afford more places?
I don't think that we're oversaturated yet. I think we're very condensed, and that was on purpose at the beginning of the process. The city identified a particularly blighted area of industrial land that a lot of it was on the city tax rolls and wasn't wasn't really producing any income for the city.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought this would be a great spot to revitalize. And I think it's worked leaps and bounds. Obviously you look at the buildings that were there 10 years ago and look at them now, and it's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue I have with that is there's still when you form a zone and put all those sales in one spot and everything, it still has a built-in stigma of, oh, you're one of those people, you go over there.
Mm-hmm.
And when the marijuana regulatory law was passed, it said that we were supposed to be regulated exactly like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So I still have issues with, why do we need a separate store for this? Why does it have to be have its own? You got state tax on it. You got a city fees for getting a dispensary up and running and everything. I think that those boundaries should be wiped away. And if your business qualifies, if you're have a qualified business that is in C2 or C3 commercial, that I think you should be able to place a dispensary there.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than being able to place a party store or anything else like that. You don't put them next to schools. You don't put them next to churches. We have, we have zoning for that. That's what we have zoning for. But it still doesn't say that you have to go at this own separate spot in its own separate space to access. I think that's detrimental for some patients who are trying to access their meds that have to come from all the way on the other side in the Steel area or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should open up the Getty Street corridor. That would be a wonderful corridor to try to revamp. And if we opened up another zone, what do you think would happen to some of the storefronts along the Getty Street corridor?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to take you to a different area. I want to talk to you about the charging of people to get to our beaches and stuff like that.
Okay.
The city decided to charge people to go to Pier Marquette and so on and so forth.
Yep.
They raised more money than they thought they would.
Correct.
So what did they do?
Extremely successful.
It was extremely successful. So with that said, extremely successful. So what did they do? They raised the fees.
Right.
Oh, how do you feel about that?
Honestly, I had this discussion. I've been a proponent, and I'm going to go right on record and say this. I've been a proponent of the parking fees down at Pier Marquette Park. I have watched for over a decade of the city, us as city residents subsidizing upper middle class Chicago's vacations, coming here and I thought that these parking fees would be a great way to not only pay for the close to $500,000 of upkeep on Pier Marquette itself, but because it costs all that money to upkeep Pier Marquette, we were letting parks all over the city languish, peeling paint, old equipment, ball diamonds that haven't seen light love in over 10 years
or activity.
Right. And our leisure services department was disbanded. I'd love to see that come back with some of our COVID funding, because that directly gives people something to do.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about that more. I want to talk to you about that more.
Okay.
The leisure services, you're hearing so much when it comes down to defund the police and all this kind of stuff. My thing is that, okay, if you have a department that is successful of helping the community, that's fine. We are never going to be without police. We need police officers.
Correct.
There are good police officers.
Yes.
They should be punished. They should also look at each other and say, if there's a bad one, get rid of them. With that said, you and I were talking before the show, is that leisure services, mental health, and other agencies could come along with police or respond instead of police, because you give me an example, and I think that's a good example. Why don't you tell our listeners and voters about that example?
Sure. I talked with I talk with city leaders all the time, and I talk with not only our chief of police, but I talk with chief of polices from neighboring counties and even as far as over into Kent County.
Mhm.
And one of them gave me an extremely interesting anecdote one time. They told me about a couple, I'm going to call them the Smiths. And the Smiths had in 1 year 186 responses to their residents
Yes.
from the police department. And what it was is Mr. Smith, is the second Mr. Smith started taking a drink of anything, Mrs. Smith would call the cops. And the cops would by law have to respond.
Right.
That's what they have to do. And Mrs. Smith would ask for Mr. Smith to be removed from the house. He wasn't drunk at that point. He wasn't belligerent and or anything like that. This most of the time is what the chief told me, and the officers that responded told me. But so they would take him, they would take him a mile and a half down the road to a friend's house, drop him off. He'd sleep the night off, come walk back home, and the cycle would start all over again. The cost to that city was over $135,000 a year just to respond to that one residence. Those people don't need a cop. They need a social and chemical intervention along with the police department. They need services riding along with them so they have a chance of breaking that cycle. And in that way, the police, and I talked to the officers too. And the officers, I said, what would you rather be doing? They said, oh, I'd much rather be out, looking and fighting for real crime. But I know that an hour and a half of my day is going to be spent on the Smiths. So, and it's instances like that. Now, I would never, ever advocate for sending a social worker or anybody into a situation that's unknown. This is a known residence where, the same product comes over and over again. I think these social services should be embedded with the police department. I don't think they should be separate. So ultimately, I don't think it would be a defund the police. I think it would be more like funding a different area within the police department to interdict some of these problems, so you don't have those issues continuing day after day after day.
I think it becomes, you have to work smarter, not harder. And as a firefighter, we responded to mental health issues over and over and over again. And those issues should have been dealt with, not police or fire, but that should have been dealt with the help or a social worker or the response that we had that should have been dealt with social workers.
Yeah. And a lot of times the police are, if they run into this mental health situation, their job is basically to just contain that problem immediately and then transport them to Mercy ER for an evaluation. Well, that's still not a great outstanding use of our police's time. I believe that if we had social services embedded within our police department, those areas could be identified, and some of that could come off the plate. And you're exactly right with your I forgot about your first responder knowledge of going into areas like that. I'm sure you saw it hundreds of times.
Yes. Even the chief of police said that he would be more than willing to have people come and form that relationship to help the citizens of Muskegon. And I think that's something that we have to look at.
I do too. And I think it's just a city government's job is to help the people, all the people at the topmost level, all the way down to the people that need the most services allowed. And how do we do that the best way? And I don't always think that a police response is the best way to handle these situations. It's just, especially if it's a repeat, a revolving hamster wheel type situation, like the Smiths were placed in the departments in.
Right. I want to talk to you about an issue that's close to dear to my heart. Got the red on is the fire department. You had a fire department that was a very well respected fire department, and now that fire department is using borrowed trucks. Now, I want to thank Eggleston, the township, for being good neighbors for doing that. But we were never in that. Uh, we never had to do that before. Matter of fact, we had extra trucks to help other people. When you have firefighters, their average salary, starting salary, you look at the structure of the hours and stuff, basic is like $11 an hour. Um, what do we do to change all this stuff? Because these guys are coming, even in the police department, they're getting trained and they're going and leaving Muskegon.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with another candidate here in town, and we thought that the police department, the one thing too is we'd like to see staffing, or at least I'd like to see staffing back up to 12 full-time firefighters always on shift.
Exactly.
We're trying to climb back to 8 or 9 before COVID, and then we stepped backwards a little bit. But there's no reason that, once again, we couldn't augment our fire department budget to make our fire department a little more attractive and be able to staff up to 12 officers. So at least we have 2 people in each station on site. Because right now I think it's a lot. We're anytime that there's a structure fire, and I believe we're always calling for aided services.
Yeah.
And and not that there's anything wrong. I personally think, and that's not going to happen in the city of Muskegon's conversation. That's, we can start it or have it, but I believe that it's probably past time to have a central fire authority over a larger part of our county, so we don't have duplication of services, and we don't, we can do those things. That you talked about fire trucks and things like that. I also know that we have a fire truck in the city of Muskegon that's broken. It's not operational, but we keep it around because it counts as a reserve engine and raises our ISO rating up.
Oh boy.
So you're kind of playing a little bit of smoke and mirrors there, how safe our citizens are when you have an engine that's down and broken, but it remains on the books, because even though it's inoperable, it still counts as a reserve engine.
And to go back to what we were talking about earlier, money that was spent on cards for businesses, that money was supposed to go to a fire truck, getting a fire truck built.
Yeah. Yep. And as far as I know, most of those cards are still sitting in a safe.
Really?
Yeah. Well, really? There was obviously instances and investigations that had to go on. So until any of that was finished out and everything, I may be wrong on that. I'd have to investigate a little more. Don't take my word totally on that. But I knew that while we're conducting investigations, those cards had to be sealed and locked up.
Now let's take a look at the activities. We used to have leisure services, one of the finest leisure service departments throughout Western Michigan, to give our young kids and people something to do. But yet, that's one thing that we let people let go. And the one thing, being a part of it was as a coach and knowing the person that was in that department, is they started programs for not only for kids in Muskegon to do stuff, but they had kids from Muskegon meet kids from Muskegon Heights, meet kids from North Muskegon, meet kids from Oak Ridge, and they form bonds. But I don't see that happening anymore. And my question is how do you feel about the leisure service department?
I'd like to see leisure services come back as a department. I benefited from it as a kid. I used to get on my bike at Muskegon High School. I grew up right across the street from the gym doors of Muskegon High School. I'd get on my bike. I ride my way all the way out to McGrath Park, learn to play tennis.
Mm-hmm.
But it was available to children, and my mom was so appreciative of it. It gave me something to get out and do in the summer. It gave her some obviously needed time where I was out of the house and things like that. And I just don't think that any of those opportunities are, outside of maybe the Boys and Girls Club, who is really picking up the slack big time
Right.
on a lot of these things.
Right.
And whether or not we reactivate our own or if we supplement their programs even more, I don't know what the best use of our money is, but I know that until they came around, there was virtually nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Exactly. And I think that there's too much idle time. And I know we have COVID, which we still have. We still have people.
Yep.
But with that said, as we're coming out of that, we have to be thinking forward that we really need to give people something to do, leisure, whether it's like you said, you went tennis, I went and played baseball at basketball at McRae or McGrath or Sheldon Park, or all these parks were open.
I coached soccer for Muskegon City Soccer. You coached.
I coached soccer.
Bowling.
Yeah,
you coached bowling for a long time. I know, and I think it's so important to have kids start forming those bonds as early as you can.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you're the longer you delay those social interactions and everything, the harder it is for anybody to get together.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not, if you're from, it doesn't matter what neighborhood you're from. It's just those bonds. I think the earlier we can instill them. And that's why I was so grateful that even in the junior high, we had those leisure services programs that I could get out and experience.
Right.
I'd like to see a lot of that come back, because it does. It not only takes people off the street and gives them something to do, but it starts them forming bonds with people in their community.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know everybody. I knew a few people around Muskegon High School, maybe 2 or 3 that played tennis, but I didn't know anybody else. But when I did that, I met 23 other people from all across the city that liked doing the same thing I did. And I still have some, we're looking at, oh geez, I'm going to date myself here, but we're looking at 40 years later, and I still have some of those friends.
Right. I want to take this time to talk. What are some of the differences between you and the guy that's currently in office?
They're the two at-large commissioners right now are Dan Seibenga and Ken Johnson.
Okay, and Ken has
decided not to run for re-election for
council.
Because he is challenging Mayor Gowan for mayor.
Right.
So that leaves one incumbent basically the challenge, and that's Dan.
So let's talk about Dan.
I've known Dan for a whole lot of years. Dan lives right down in the Nelson neighborhood. He lived his house was if I count, maybe 13 houses down from the house I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
We've met, I know the guy. I see him at Winter Sports Complex all the time. My issue with them is a lot of the things that the commission currently is, they're taking all their leads from city staff. And if city staff comes up with the idea, it's an automatic vetted go and off to the races we go. I think that I'll bring a little bit more of a watchdog attitude to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the housing thing. Yeah, we're building affordable housing, but who are we building it for?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we calling affordable? Because let's show apples to apples, on that one. Or, did we have accountability in the gift card things and trying to get an audit started? Dan voted to not have an audit.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me, that was a watershed moment for me. That was one where I said, geez, we've got a couple of instances where it might not be totally shady spending, but it's obviously irregular.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're voting not to dig into it.
Right.
Right. And so that's the attitude that I want to take if I'm installed on the commission.
Mm. I have seen over the last several years that I know we're a city manager ran system, but the buck stops at the city council level.
Correct.
I've seen over several times where that the city commission, like you said, took the lead. They didn't take the lead. The commission didn't take the lead. They just rubber stamped what was given to them.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I think you're right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have very little debate on that one, Greg. I think that, especially, we had another instance come up where our city manager wanted to have his office, and his office is getting busier as we grow as a city and as we take on more things. The office is getting busier, so he wanted a number two. He wanted a deputy. Well, we already have an assistant city manager position on the books through the civil service, vetted through civil service and everything.
Correct.
But he wanted to be able to handpick and select outside without having to go through the civil service process. And I was questioning, why are we creating a brand new position when we have a vacant position sitting unfilled on our books?
Exactly.
And I'm not sure about, I know we've had a lot of turnover in department heads. Muhammad is gone and Bernadette is gone and a few others, and I'm not sure on how their replacements for upper level people were selected. I'd like to know more about that process. Were they all vetted through, or did they were just this was the job just posted? This is the candidate, and then the commission votes.
Well, let's talk about that, because lately there's been a swinging door of people leaving the city in crucial jobs, and without any exit polls or finding out why they left or what some of the things are doing better. Talk about
those exit interviews may exist, Greg, but I don't know if anybody's ever seen them.
Wow. But that goes back to your transparency thing that you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That we have, that you're there to serve, but we as Joe Bowl citizens need to see and hear what's going on. And I think, how do you feel now? Monday they have a work session, and the work session they decide what the issues, how they're going to vote on the issues, and the issues then decided. Then Tuesday, when they go into a meeting with the people, if it was a 5-4 vote on, let's say, working on a park or something, but if it was a 5-4 vote, we're going to vote in unison and speak as one on Tuesdays. How do you feel about that?
I understand, obviously you go into work sessions to dig deeper into issues that you don't want to spend as much time at the general session in. But it's supposed to be fact finding and working through the procedure. It's not supposed to be to gather a consensus then and then on how things are going to come out when there's a vote, at least in my, at least what I think. I think that, that you go into work sessions to do exactly that, to do the work. But when you come out of that work session, it's still your responsibility to vote in the way that is best for the people. And whether it's, whether it comes out 4-3 or 7-0 or whatnot, I always look at it, what's best for those people at that point. And the same, with a work session like that, it's to do the work, but it's just to dive deeper into issues. The ultimate decisions come when it's time to vote at the commission level.
And please, I need people to hear this. I'm not anti-Mayor Steve right now. No. I'm not anti-Frank. I'm not anti-Dan. I want these guys to get on and talk about their views. But I do feel that they have made some mistakes. One thing I was talking to you about is that we see politicians during election time, but we don't see them anymore. Um, Talk about going to the neighborhood associations and being accessible and available.
I, I'd like to say that I'm the, I'd like to say that I'm a great poster child for doing that, Greg. Like you said, that we only see every 4 years when it comes run campaign. I need to be better at that myself.
Mm-hmm.
I do engage a lot down here in the Bluffton Beechwood neighborhood, in the Lakeside neighborhood, Glenside, Nelson, but I don't engage enough with Marquette. I don't engage enough with McLaughlin. And that's something I need to work on within myself too. I've reached back now to a lot of my old schoolmates that live in the McLaughlin neighborhoods, live in these places, and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm running for candidate as a candidate right now. I believe I need to be accessible to you. I'm reaching out to you to find out what you think of what's going on in the city and how you think, and let me know what I can do to keep you engaged and keep you as my friend, to keep that information pipeline running."
Now,
You know?
didn't you grow up in at one point in the McLaughlin area?
From first grade to fifth grade, I was in McLaughlin. I lived on Ransom Street. I was about 3 blocks straight down Ransom from McLaughlin School. Then my mom got married. We moved over to right across the street from the gym doors of Muskegon High School. When McLaughlin was shut up as a public school by MPS, I actually helped with the grand reopening of Covenant House, because I'm always fearful, because schools are such a linchpin binder of the communities they surround. They always have been.
Exactly.
And when we right size our community down, and yes, MPS has lost a lot of students, so yeah, we had an overcapacity in buildings, but you have to consider what the effects are going to be. Right now I'm extremely concerned about the fate of what now becomes Nelson School.
Oh man,
that is a linchpin, because it's not going to be utilized by MPS. And now the Boys and Girls Club have their own building in the Lakeshore, in the old YMCA building. So I'm concerned about the linchpin of that Nelson neighborhood right there.
now
that was my junior high. That's where that's where I started learning how to be an adult.
well, if you look at Nelson neighborhood, when it stopped being a junior high, the neighborhood took a dive. And if you look at a lot of other schools, when they closed, the same thing happened. Those schools are, like you say, linchpins to the community. And when you close them and you don't put the right thing in. Now, there is talk about what's going to happen at Nelson. I'm not going to say it until I have facts in front of me, because we don't give gossip.
Right.
But there's facts of some stuff that are going, and we will talk about that. I want to talk about, will you commit right now on this show today to the people that are listening and watching that you will be that candidate for all of the city?
It's one of the things I've always spoke about already in my candidacy is I see a huge resurgence in the downtown area, and it's fabulous. I mean, we haven't seen downtown activity like this in a generation. It took, since the mall was in its heyday, was probably the last time we saw downtown traffic like that.
Mm-hmm.
The West End is building things. Lakeside is rejuvenating and everything. I'd like to see all the neighborhoods in the city of Muskegon benefit from that resurgence.
Mm-hmm.
I keep talking about one of the things that I think is another linchpin that we need is we continue to have a huge food desert in the downtown area. We don't have a dedicated grocery store that can serve any of our core downtown Nelson, McLaughlin neighborhoods like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, it wasn't a great food outlet, But now that we lost the Dollar General up in the Moon School area, that's one more food outlet that was at least walkable distance for
Right.
residents that
Right.
we no longer have. So you have to go out to Muskegon Township, or you have to go to Myers and Norton Shores area to access healthy, sustainable foods.
In other words, you have to leave the city. You have to leave the city, go to another city or township to get your goods when you should have some place to buy those goods at least a couple blocks away.
And if you want to raise the health level and the healthiness of our entire community, we have to we need to solve this food desert problem that's going on. Well, geez, I mean, there wasn't a grocery store when I grew up down in Nelson.
Right.
You know,
we did have Govs.
Right. Okay. And I want to give a shout out to Benson's. Benson's is trying their best to fill in a little bit with fresh items and everything, but that's not their wheelhouse. That we need that core grocery store. I think the 3rd Street corridor, I've been screaming for a decade now, kind of like I screamed on the traffic circle down here on the West End, that Olds Matson building is the prime candidate for where a central downtown grocery store should be located. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we attract it and how to make it happen? Is that something that the city is going to have to subsidize to get it up and running? Kind of like we did with this infill housing program. We're going to have to take the lead and jump forward and do those things, and then we'll sell these units, and you'll see they'll be successful. I think we can do the same model with the grocery store, and I hope we can.
Jack, do you feel that there is balance between what the commission does or what the city manager or the staffing does versus the west side versus the east side? Do you feel that there's balance or there's more time spent on one side?
I don't think that there's been balance for quite a long time, Greg. Mm-hmm. I mean, even when I was growing up, I believe that it was imbalance between east side and west side. Mm-hmm. It's obvious when I make analogy that when the city gets into financial troubles and everything, a lot of time they look to, okay, how can we raise money? And well, one time it was Harbortown. The next time it was Belcom Cove condominiums. The next time it was Bluffton Bay Estates and everything. And I think that the city looks for that balance in revenue when we're running out of money. But once again, that doesn't help any of those other core neighborhoods. The investment comes into the west side and everything. But and downtown. My stepfather told me 15 years ago, he said, Jack, eventually the downtown, the west side, they're going to be fine. That's not, you don't concentrate. There was a Bible verse. I can't quote it by heart, but I bet you can, Greg. There's a Bible verse that says, there was 99 sheep in a flock and one sheep ran off and was astray. Mm-hmm. And the Lord went out and helped to bring that sheep back into the flock. Well, the other 99 sheep said, well, what about us? Don't we matter? And he said, well, yes, you matter, but you weren't the one that was in trouble. So and I think that I do think the city will start doing some more of those investments. They've talked about doing more investments in the core neighborhoods and everything. I just hope that those talks become fruition. I hope that it actually follows through.
How about going on public record about, when I was in the fire department, there were like 45, 46 individuals. They are down to dismal numbers.
Correct.
How about getting those numbers back up? It's a safety issue, not only for them, but for you.
Yeah. And I don't understand the vendetta in the last few years that it kind of feels like a vendetta that's been waged against the fire department.
Yep.
I haven't seen the same push to hold accouable or whatnot within the fire department. I haven't seen the same, within the police department. I've seen it almost feels like an attack on the fire department. And when you lower wages down to a starting salary that is going to equal $11 to $12 an hour, how can you ask somebody to put their life on the line for you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's it. It doesn't seem like it. I don't know. It's there. It's not accountable. It's another piece of the accountability and transparency piece that I think needs to come out. I'd like to see our firefighters back up to a staffing level between at least 10 and 12 full time on shift all the time, because that way they're not putting themselves in immediate danger when they're trying to respond to an instance.
How about committing to the police department to make sure that they have the tools? I think the chief is with the new body cam that they have is on track. I mean, this is body cam that you can't delete. It's instantly fed back to a system. I think he's doing, but we have to have solid police officers. But what about more people on the streets?
Well, I want to commend, you're right. I want to commend Chief Lewis for taking that step and moving towards the body cams and moving towards because that's an accountability and once again a transparency piece. That's, I mean, literally in your face.
Right.
You see video. I'd like to see a citizens committee that is involved in the review of those tapes. So it's not strictly, okay, we saw this and this, and and I think the majority of our police officers do a great job.
Yeah,
I've talked to
absolutely.
I've talked to I've talked to umpteen numbers of them. Every year they bring Muskegon police volunteers to come out with our sixth graders to the winter sports complex. They bring every sixth grader out from Muskegon Public Schools. I met them. I met a ton of guys out there, and I think they do a great job. I do agree with you on one point that they know who the bad apples are. And I would like to see, I would like to see some of these guys come forward, and, you don't have to publicly shame somebody, but if you have a talk with your superior or have a talk up the chain of command to at least let them know that I see this type of activity, and it's not something that our police department should embrace.
Well, I can give you an example. I worked at a place where, excuse me, I served as a union vice president for 4 years, and during that time, I only wrote two grievances. The thing is that if somebody came in late because they had a hangover, and you got disciplined, it was like, I need you to write a grievance. It was like, no, come to the office. I am not writing a grievance to protect you for you doing something. Right. So I say that analogy that if the police will govern themselves and that the union will govern themselves, I think that will be take care of a lot of problems.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that we've taken steps in the police department to move. We had a number of years back. Boy, it's a while back. We had the Pena scandal with Wallace, and we now and lately we had the officer with some questionable material all over his walls. As he was doing trying to sell his house. But, I think that those instances are becoming less and less. I still would like to find a way to attract more persons of color to the fire and the police department. I think that communities are governed and they don't, my mom used to say, they don't act a fool if they're looking around their own people.
Hey, you starting to preach there. Yeah. And I give it an example is that me, a Muskegon kid that didn't necessarily have the training, but was given the opportunity to be a firefighter. I'm in that neighborhood. That's my community. And more of those opportunities need to happen for other kids that might want to be a police officer, firefighter, or run the city.
Right. The one thing I did want to add too is we've had a community policing division within our police department for a long time now. I think community policing's been on the books. The issue that I see, at least in my ward down here is our community police officer is on a hamster wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've had a total of 4 different community officers in the last 6 years.
Right.
Well, it's pretty difficult to learn about your community or anything if you're only in it for 3/4 of a year and then the next guy is on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've met our new community officer. I like the guy. He helped out at our helping to revitalize some of our trails here in the West End. We had some issues with a neighbor who thought that we were overstepping and doing things on city land that we didn't have permission for, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
And the community officer came and smoothed that out and everything. But
Right.
I think a community officer, A, should be from the community, and
Mm-hmm.
B, be embedded in that community long enough to know who the neighbors are, know where issues are, and it is once you've earned these people's trust, they're probably going to open up to you a little bit more.
All right, we had a minute and a half, Jack. Tell people how they can reach you and give your last spiel.
All right. Well, once again, I'm Jack Page, and I'm running for the commissioner at large of City of Muskegon. Reach out to me on my Facebook page. That's Page for Muskegon, just like it's spelled behind you. PAGE, Page for Muskegon on Facebook. It shows my platform. It shows some of the community events I've attended lately, and it will show more things as we move through the primary and then to the general cycle, hopefully.
All right. Jack, I want to thank you. Good luck, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right. The show is about to end. I only have a couple seconds left. I just wanted to take and thank Jack Page for being on. I want all the other candidates to know that we want you to come on this show and have the same conversation that Jack did. You have an open invitation. We've sent out emails. I've asked some people on Facebook to even call me. If you don't respond, don't look for us to be trying to contact you and running behind you, because that's not going to happen. With that said, I want to say this last thing, because the show is getting ready to end. There's so much stuff and trouble in the world. You know what? Go look for some joy. Just go look for some happiness. And you know what? Go change somebody's life. Somebody needs you. Somebody needs you to do some groceries or whatever. Go change somebody's life. This is Torn in Two for this week. You take care and God bless.